welcome to another episode of the Galen Hour. It's always a pleasure to be here with you on Wednesday nights. The Galen Hour is a production of Galen University. It addresses issues of relevance to Galen and to our nation and people. It focuses on academic excellence, sustainable development, and lifelong learning. We have a very relevant and important topic that we'll be discussing tonight. The topic is breaking the bias. This is Women's Month, and so the topic is the International Women's Month or Women's Day topic, and we were talking about exactly that, breaking the bias. We have a very exciting lineup of guests for you tonight, and I will introduce them, starting with Dr. Deborah Mencias McMillan, who will also co-host with me tonight. So Dr. McMillan is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Arts, Science, and Technology at Galen University. And like I said earlier, she's our co-host. Welcome, Dr. McMillan.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we also have two of our criminal justice students, two of our Galen Eagles, Celine Barrow, who is here with us tonight. Welcome, Celine. And Alexander Flowers. I'm sorry, Celine. Yeah. Alexander Flowers is also on with us tonight. He's also a criminal justice major, and he's the president of the Rotary Club of Galen University.
Good evening and good night, everyone. Thank you.
So welcome to our guests. This is actually a very exciting topic for us. We are really pleased to have Dr. McMillan and two of our Galen Eagles on with us tonight. The topic is hashtag breaking the bias. And I like to use the hashtag. It's kind of catchy, but really the topic is so very important. This is a team that is a global team. We're always looking at ways that we can raise awareness to women's rights and women equality for women across the globe. And this is very important for us in Belize. And so on that note, I want to introduce our first segment. Our first segment for the night is Breaking the Bias. And I welcome Dr. McMillan to take on co-hosting with me tonight. Dr. McMillan?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, especially our listeners. It is indeed my distinct pleasure and honor to be joined by two of my past students, two Galen Eagles. And these students have been very vocal about gender issues, especially during class discussions. They have certainly not shied away from uncomfortable conversations. And so, of course, we were pleased when they agreed to join us here tonight to speak about gender bias. As you know, or as you may know, Belize's Ministry of Human Development, Families, and Indigenous Peoples Affairs has adopted the International Women's Day theme, Break the Bias, as we celebrate Women's Month here in Belize. Now, for this show, we have a working definition of bias which we want to share with the audience. And our definition is, for bias, gender bias, when a person is treated differently based on the person's real or perceived gender identity. Okay, so for this hour, we will be looking specifically at how women and girls have been intentionally or unintentionally treated differently simply because of their gender. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask our two Galen Eagles to respond to two questions that I have. So we're going to begin with Celine, and then after that, I will ask Alexander to pick up on his question. So Celine, let's begin with the question of what it is like being a girl or a woman in Belize. And after you respond to that question, I would like you, Alexander, to kindly tell us how you have been raised to think about girls and women. So Celine, if you can take on that question, what is it like being a girl or woman in Belize?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Dr. McMillan. So from my personal experience of being a girl in Belize, we're often seen as being weak, accommodating, and nurturing, which means that from growing up, I have been taught by my parents and my families that I should nurture, meaning I should be the one who provide for my family in the sense that I would take care of them. I would do the chores in the house. I would wash the dishes. I would do laundry. I would clean, while my brother, on the other hand, would not be such responsible to do that. So I feel like simply because I am a girl, or as a young woman, that particular role has been assigned to me from birth. Also, sometimes when I go out in the street, I'm also considered weak. Like, for example, if I'm driving with my friends and I stop at a police checkpoint and maybe I don't have my license or something to that effect, they would say, "Well, you're a girl. The police would allow you to go through." Or when you enter in certain rooms, simply because you're a woman, you're looked at a different light. And it sometimes, although they might feel that, well, it's okay because you can get away with with a lot of things. To me, I consider it being weak and being sort of feeble. Also, I believe that as a female, especially in the field that want to take, which is criminal justice, sometimes there is a stigma that is associated with this field, who would say, maybe only men should be able to sentence someone or to represent the crown, especially as it relates to the prosecution department. So I feel, as well as a young female, I have a lot of challenges in that area.
Yes, definitely. Wanting to pick up on that point with, I scheduled out some things here in how I wanted to present this information. And, of course, I want to give a disclosure in saying that, of course, I don't represent all men in Belize, but essentially what I have socialized to believe, especially by my community, these are basically what I have. So the first most centralized thing or theme when discussing women, at least from the perspective of being a man, I put that women are to be acquired. That's the first idea that is presented to us. It's not necessarily that, for example, I want us to consider the way that men court women. There's this idea of, and there is even a study on it that shows that men, when approaching women, don't expect to be turned down. They don't expect that this woman is capable of saying no to the male advance, right? And so that to me touches on what I've been socialized to believe. It's not a conversation. That's the woman that I want. I can get her because women are to be acquired. That's the first idea. The second one is that as a man, I should aim for a wife in life. But for presently, because I'm 21 years old, I can be promiscuous, right? And so this touches on again what I am taught about women is that I should want a wife who is reserved, who is maybe even religious, because religion will teach her to be reserved and to be this perfect image of what a wife should be, because a wife should be collective, right? And always respectful. However, as a man, I am free to basically engage in whatever promiscuity that I would like, because again, this is the image of man that we have, and this is what some young males are being socialized to believe. The next one is that I should acquire a girlfriend who is the most beautiful of her group. And if there are traits that are unfavorable to me, then I can basically exchange her for yet another beautiful woman who will have more favorable traits. Right? That's the reality. If when speaking to some, not necessarily current friends, because I've advanced from that thinking, but back then, when we get together in groups, it's that, oh, why do you want to mess with this one? She's so troublesome. Why don't you just get another girlfriend? And it's like, you see this idea of interchangeability when it comes to women, as if we're not discussing, a human being. So that is where we see that, oh, it's easy to, one doesn't work for you. It's like a light bulb. If a light bulb's at work, you get another one, right? And you see how inhumane that song just saying it. However, this is the idea that is socialized to us, and especially me as a young male. And then another point that I have is, you learn as a young male, I am taught that I can learn domestic duties. Indeed, I can learn to wash the dishes, wash my own clothes, iron in the morning. But it's an idea that is socialized to me that it is a temporary idea. So I don't necessarily need to maintain these responsibilities. I should endeavor to relinquish them to my first girlfriend, or especially my wife. That's the idea that is socialized. It's not necessarily that, oh, as a man, you're always going to be washing the dishes, always going, no, we think well, when you get your girlfriend, if she doesn't want to wash your clothes, then that's the eyebrow raiser, because what type of woman is she? What type of girlfriend doesn't want to wash dishes and clean and stuff like that, right? And so to me, I bring these down to four major points. One, young males are taught that women are to be acted upon. Two, purity and mindfulness in relationships, they are for women, not men. This is the idea that is being taught. Thirdly, women are almost like a commodity with high availability. So where one doesn't work for you, it presents some type of damage or issue that is unfavorable to you. You switch her out for someone new, right? And then fourth, domestic duties, sorry, are naturally inherent to women. That's the idea, just as their soft nature, quote unquote. So they should, as such, you should use them to keep the house clean. That's the idea. And I know some persons may say, oh, but not necessarily. But in action, in practice, this is what we're doing. We're saying that, what, young women, and aspire to clean the home. And remember some things that some women are told, oh, the way you keep your kitchen is, the way you keep your man, or stuff, statements like that. And it's like, how does that match up? That to me forms a part of the teaching of what we're telling young females and men about females.
Thank you very much, Celine and Alexander. And I keep thinking about what students have shared with me also. I think there was one time a student mentioned how difficult it is to be a girl, a female in our culture, being bombarded by these very preconceptions that you all are sharing, these expectations. And one of the important points I recall one student sharing with me was telling me how unfair it is, how very unfair this treatment is. And she was saying that she feels like she's not being heard when she calls it out, even in the home. And the important thing, and I think what struck me, was when the student said, and you know what? This makes me feel undervalued. And I thought that that was a crucial statement, sad, and so many emotions with that statement. Now, having said that, then, can we move into the other question of what then, in your minds, do we seem to be teaching our girls? What are we teaching our daughters? What are we telling our sisters? Do you want to go first, Alexander, on this one?
Sure. I going back to, kind of coinciding with some of the points that I made before, something that I have is we teach women that and girls that beauty is preferred to intellect. Think about when you're walking with your daughter on the street. What do men and even women tell your child, your female child, oh, she's beautiful. Do they ever say, oh, she's going to be very intelligent? She's going to be a leader. That's not what that's not what they're told. Sorry, it's, oh, you're beautiful. Oh, she has beautiful hair, and the long eyelash and the pretty smile. But none of these things are the things that we put on resumes to get the job, right? However, we tell males, oh, he's very smart. I see the way that he look at the way he speaks, and look at the things that he do. We say that, sorry, he has, amazing problem solving skills. These are normally the terms that are associated with male and male language, right? Oh, problem solving and mathematics and these areas. And then also we are teaching young women that and girls that independence is a man's virtue. Because when you have mothers telling their daughters, oh, um, don't do so and so, because which man will want you like that? Or what type of woman are you going to be, when essentially, sorry, your womanhood should not be dependent on male proximity. So a man shouldn't make you the woman that you are. You are by inherently the woman. You're a woman, right? And so you are yourself. You have the responsibility to build yourself. However, by saying these things, by these certain of these languages, we're teaching women that, what, independence is a man's virtue. You, in your everyday action, think, how can I satisfy, sorry, the man's desire? And then also we think, well, I think about confidence in female sexuality. We often tell females that, females who are confident in themselves and their sexuality, oh, that's not desirable, because why would you want this long line of boyfriends and exes? Why would you use your body like that? Stuff like that we tell women. However, when we think about it, how let's consider males. When you consider the amount of exes any young man or older man will have, we never really sit down to have that conversation, because while as a man can have 20 exes, the woman can only really have maybe one. Because one too many and she's undesirable. She's not the first amongst her group that we would desire. And then also we think about, well, I think about the overall perception, as a woman. So there's always this idea that you're not to necessarily overthrow the male image. So he's kind of upright and center, and then you are to his immediate right heel, I call it. So you're standing basically here, at this corner. So this, to me, for example, consider even women who are not necessarily intending to pursue a sexual relationship with their male friends, but essentially they have a lot of male friends. The first thing that people will say, especially women of their same age group, is, oh, or older people even say, oh, she's flighty. Why would she want to be walking around with all of these men, and always hanging around with them, when essentially, there should not be any connection between you as a woman and, representing your gender in association with how many friends of the opposite sex you have. Right? And then lastly, confidence is sexy and desirable to men, but women are taught always to be subject and ready to change, because again, if your man so desires it, it's almost like your life goal to accomplish it. So some women will go and they want, I don't know, maybe they want the long hair, and they go for whatever they want to extend their hair with, and then the boyfriend says, oh, I don't like that, I like the natural look. Some women will readily remove that hair and remove the color and remove everything else to represent what that man desires. And again, this is what we're teaching our girls. Even I think about when we're in high school, consider the way that young girls see maybe someone of the opposite sex and, a male, and they say, oh, they like that person. All of a sudden they begin to change themselves. They want to wear something different. They want to wear their hair different. I don't know, maybe they want the tight fitting dress or whatever they believe that male wants. And again, this is the idea that some of our very own mothers are teaching throughout their relationship, their mother-daughter relationship, that guess what, try to be what he wants. And so those to me are what we're teaching our female beings, I want to call them.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very interesting to hear it, and then coming from your lens as a male, right? Celine, what do you think we are teaching our daughters? What are we teaching you?
I think that if we're saying that, well, to me, they're teaching, if you're saying that a woman is not, she should not be the head of the house, it would be the man. So if the man is the head, then we're teaching the girls that she's the tail. She should follow, like Alexander said, she should follow and do whatever the man tells her to do. Or even if it's not maybe something that she has naturally, she have to find a way to adapt it, whether it's the hair, whether it's the body shape, whether it's the way she carry herself, just so that she can be whoever he wants her to be. And that leads to the point to say that you're giving the man full control over this woman, to say she is his property, to the extent that she needs to do whatever he says, and if she doesn't do whatever she says, he can move on and find someone else, because she simply does not meet that requirement anymore to be his woman or his wife or his girlfriend. And also, if we're teaching women that, or if we're looking at women and seeing that they're weak and they're feeble, then how can someone weak and feeble be in a position to lead? So we're also teaching them that they would not, they don't qualify for leadership qualities. And I think that is, to me, it's very heart-wrenching, because if you can teach a woman this growing up, or a girl growing up, that she's weak, or everyone in male look at her as, someone weak or someone feeble, then when she goes out there for positions, for leadership position, then she faces these circumstances as everyone looking at her as like you sure you can do this? Are you capable of doing this? Compared to a man, he's looked at as being fierce, as being in leadership position. So simply because of the gender difference, he is automatically one step ahead than a female, especially in the work environment. And then also when we look at different work positions and we go and we label these different positions and saying, okay, this is a male oriented field. Then again, being a woman going in that direction, you face a lot of challenges, a lot of criticism from the public and stuff like that. So I believe that teaching what we're teaching a woman, that she's weak and that she's the tail, so she should be a property of a man instead of be the one who leads and take that first step and take those leadership positions and qualities.
And if I may, I have one more thing to add to that because you made me realize something and think about something. This concept of marriage, right? Of course, respecting the union that is marriage. When you look at it, how often do you see that woman or even the man try to consider that, or let us use both our names, as our last name on our certificates and in our legal documents. It's always, well, the woman will take the man's name and that's it. She should abandon her family and her family name and she will take his name and become his part of his family and his home. And then the second thing that is a contradictory message when it comes to the female and her perception is that while she is so emotional to lead office and to lead a country, she is strong enough to build up her man. And to me, that is always so interesting because, how can you say a person cannot lead an office and lead masses of people, but essentially she can almost bend a person to her will, because while he is sad, she can bring him up. While he is happy, she can make him sad. There's a certain power and strength to that I think people don't realize. That we're saying in our messaging that, you know what, you build up your man, but essentially to do so, that means this person is very, very strong and very emotionally intelligent.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you very much, Celine. And I am sure you all have expressed and convinced listeners that indeed these expectations, these perceptions of girls, what's the impact of all those things? And that is important for us to think about. And I'll pass it over to Miss Deanna.
Thank you so much. This was such an interesting first segment. If we've not witnessed, we've experienced almost everything that Alexander and Celine mentioned here in this first segment tonight. So it's important, and I like the fact that these are things we're bringing out into the forefront, because if we haven't been paying attention to them, it's time for us to do so. We need to ponder what it is we're doing as individuals, and help to break the bias and create equality in our country, gender equality for our women, and make Belize a better place for all. On that note, I want to break for our first ad, and we'll come back right after these ads with our second segment of the Galen Hour. Stay with us.
The Galen Eagle podcast every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Catch us live on Galen University's Facebook page, YouTube channel, and select radio stations.
Welcome back to the Galen Hour. Tonight we're talking about breaking the bias. We have joining us tonight Dr. Deborah McMillan, Alexander Flowers, and Celine Barrow, and the conversation is quite relevant. And I want to turn over the discussion to Dr. McMillan, who's our co-host for the night.
Thank you, thank you very much. Now, we heard a lot about bias in the home, bias on the street, and the need. I hope we are convinced there is a need to break the bias. But I want us to shift gear a little bit. And I want us to move into the classrooms, into the schoolyards. I don't think we can ignore the fact that bias does occur in the classrooms and even online. I think far too many times students in these spaces experience bias from those of us speaking as an instructor who have the power to influence our students, our learners, influence the way they think, the way they interpret things, and the way they behave. It's the kind of different treatment that I think tells our students, our learners, our girls, our young women that to think less of themselves. And I also feel like there are a number of things that pressured them into conforming to what I regard as discriminatory practices. So, Celine and Alexander, I want you to think a little bit about your experiences in the classroom. Um, and for this part here, Alexander, if you could go first. And I want you to share with our listeners, what do you feel? What have you observed? What have you experienced as some of the behaviors and practices by teachers, administrators, principals, staff, or your classmates that you think reinforce the very bias we have been talking about? And then Celine, I will ask you to answer that question. So let me repeat just so you can keep it fresh. What are some of the behaviors and practices by teachers, administrators, staff, and your peers, classmates, that you feel have reinforced the gender bias that we are talking about? Alexander, could we begin with you?
I've experienced, the Belizean education system, and pre-Galen, or before Galen, I would want to say some of the things that I've noticed is, first of all, the division in skills as highlighted, because as I would have mentioned before, some lecturers, at the secondary level, and even before that, would make certain statements like to say, oh well, I'm confident that the girls will represent well in the language and arts and English section of exams and tests, and so on, and of course the males will represent in the mathematics section. And to me, it's what that highlighted was, one, as a female being, you had no place in basically mathematics. It's almost as to say, well, you best represent the women well and the girls well in mathematics and English, or else you're almost discounted as a person who is representing your gender well. And the same thing for males. If you're not good at mathematics and problem solving, then essentially, what are you good at? And so to me, there's division in skills that are highlighted. Maybe some of them were not intended, but in most cases, this is why language is important. And I want to kind of give a kudos to Galen University for that, for always saying use gender neutral language. Because before, what I would have experienced was that they keep saying, oh well, like I said, the females are good for this and the males are good for that, and there seems to be no crossover. So there's a division in skills, and then a division in academia, whereby girls are expected to kind of dedicate themselves to their studies, and girls were always said, and this is straight from my memory, that, oh well, girls are good in academics. And then it begs the question, okay, but what are boys good at? And so we were told, oh, boys are good at sports. And I will admit to you shamelessly, I have never been a sports person. I was good at track and field, but I didn't realize that until I was about to graduate from high school. So before that, I never really belonged to the group of boys who was all good in sports and this stuff. So from my experience, I could tell you I felt like I didn't know where to go because, again, girls are the ones that are taught that, oh, they're going to get A's and B's in academics. And, you could rest assured that the girls will do fine. However, don't worry too much about academics for boys because at that time, boys are dropping out of school. They're probably going to join a gang, and you know what? And the others are good at sports, so that's where they belong. And then the last thing, when we further examine that point, sorry, we see this idea of and which I want to point out is that girls are always expected, to me, in my experience and my opinion, to be at the top of their classes, whereas boys are like, okay, well, you could occupy a space in the room, in the classroom, and you could get like a seat to get by. That is fine, even especially in a household. That's what fathers are teaching their boys. Even my dad, I will honestly say, didn't care too much for academics. He would say, well, that's fine. If you barely get by on your grades, that's completely fine at that level. And so that is where we switch this idea around now, and we see, okay, boys are not expected to do good in academics, and they're actually expected to do very well in sports. And in practice and in academics, what that has caused is that I have experienced that I've graduated with certain boys that I can honestly tell you that they weren't any at all good in academics. Right? Some of them were barely passing, but institutions have developed this mechanism of saying, okay, well, if they can represent our school good in sports, then give them the scholarships, advance them to the next classes. However, that opportunity is not available to girls because, again, girls aren't even expected really to do sports. And even when they have sports, it's like, yeah, they can compete, but we're not really following along. Even in our Belizean society today, you will realize that not much is invested in sports for women, but male is probably twofold or even threefold in allocation of funds. So to me, that's institutional wise and academic wise. That's what I have observed.
Celine, do you mind sharing on that question?
Sure, Dr. McMillan. Well, from my experience, as it relates to schools, administration, the curriculum, and leaders in the different schools throughout Belize, or Belize City particularly, because I've went to schools in Belize City. I think that women, simply because they are able to carry a baby, meaning their physical being, they would get penalized if they get pregnant in school. So, for example, if you have, and we're talking about a school that has both males and female attending, if a girl is attending the school because she demonstrates that her body, that she's physically pregnant, she would be suspended, she would be expelled, she wouldn't be allowed to walk up and get her diploma, simply because this is, especially at that age that she would be considering that she's going to high school, is often associated as shameful, or maybe she did not meet the criteria as it relates to the school policy. However, if it's a male, on the other hand, he could have someone pregnant in school, but simply because his body doesn't allow him to physically carry that child, and no one would, if not being told, no one can walk to him and be like, okay, you're pregnant. He is able to continue school. And then I think that this brings a great disadvantage to a girl, because not only she needs to stop school and miss that opportunity, different benefits of, just graduating, the whole excitement of finishing school, being with her friends, she's placed somewhat like a double jeopardy. And I think a paper that I read by Beskit 2009 also state that it's really considered double jeopardy, because she missed out the opportunity from being at school, missing out, graduating to an extent, compared to a male. He also have a child, or he also have someone out there pregnant, but simply because his body doesn't physically allow him to, demonstrate that he has a baby on the way or something like that, he can reap these benefits of continuing his education, still going to school. So it's almost like it's really nothing. And I think that, to me, is really sad. And girls should still be given the opportunity to continue their education, despite that, because that is really just a gender bias. And also, as Alexander stated, as it relates to sports in school, I think as well, well, unlike Alexander, I was also a basketball player. I've played sports my entire life, but as it relates to sports, especially attending an all girls school, it was not something really I would say as like when it came to girl and representing the sports department in that school, you had, well, I had an additional pressure placed on me, simply because I believe that the males in this field games to me were almost more excited, because they're the male, they can play the sport, and then it's almost like we're just really an imitation, or a replica of this. So if we want to do good and we need to be the best, simply because if we go there and we can't dribble a ball, we can't shoot the shot, it's almost like, what's the purpose? So in the sports field, like Alexander said, there is also, and I think this is something that we can see worldwide in schools, I think there is also a significant difference as it relates to that area too.
Interesting. I very much appreciate your contributions to that. It's like we keep shortchanging girls, but it would be remiss of me not to share something here. You all brought up the whole issue of sports. Right now, we have three young women, Jada, Tina, and Jasmine, paddling for Galen. Like sports, like what Alexander said, they should not be paddlers. Who are they? And I just want to say kudos to the Galen administration and the Galen support system, the student services in place that makes these young women feel valued. Look at the cheerleading. So this, like what you all have said before, I do appreciate. We have got to make sure we are not perpetuating the bias. So whenever you see things like this, we also need to congratulate people and say, yes, now, of course, I would wish we don't have to do that. This should be what it should always be, right? It should not be like an anomaly. Oh, they have these paddlers there. Oh, yeah, that's good. And then we big up. That should just be natural. And we need to call it out when we see it. And especially we need to say kudos to that team. I think that is worth saying, so that people know these are good things. We want it to continue to happen. So thank you very much for that.
Great, thank you. This discussion is just so real. Like I said, everything that we are discussing here tonight, one of us can say, I've seen that played out. I've lived that. I know people who've done that. And what are we doing in our individual spaces to ensure that we help to improve and put an end to these biases? And that's very important, I think, for all of us who have recognized that there is a bias, that there are inequalities that need to be changed and that need to be ended. I do want to give a big shout out to the Ministry of Human Development and to the Minister Dolores Balaramas Garcia, for supporting our Lady Eagles in the La Ruta Maya Challenge. Dr. McMillan spoke to it, and I'm glad she did, because talk about breaking the bias. Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you hear the stories that Jada, Tina, and Jasmine have to tell, you will realize that they have gone through many obstacles, many challenges, and they're still very positive and still an inspiration, and they continue to do so and to be so. We're so very proud of our Galen Eagles, proud of Alexander and Celine, and of course, Dr. McMillan, for bringing these issues to the forefront tonight on our Galen Hour. On that note, we'll take our last break and we'll come back with our wrap up for the night. Stay with us.
Galen University offers a variety of quality academic programs. Visit our website at www.galen.edu.bz or give us a call at 615-3129 or 614-6415 for more information. Apply today and come soar with our Galen Eagles.
The COVID-19 vaccination helps us to protect the most vulnerable.
Our choice to get vaccinated affects others.
It is a moral responsibility and an act of love for the entire community.
My name is Barrow. I am the Dean of the Faculty of Education at Galen University.
My name is Melanie Usher Donaldchek. I am the Administrative Assistant to the Office of the Provost at Galen University.
My name is Sherry Gibbs. I'm the Dean for the Faculty of Art, Science, and Technology at Galen University.
My name is Dr. Eve Aird, and I am the Provost of Galen University.
I got vaccinated because of my family, my colleagues, and my students.
Because I trust the science, but because I also want to protect myself, my family, my colleagues, students, and the community so that we can get out of this pandemic and get back to our lives.
I did it for my Galen family, my family at home, and I did it for you, please.
I got vaccinated for my husband, for my children, for my grandsons. I got vaccinated for Galen University, for my colleagues, for my students. I got vaccinated for Belize, for you.
Get vaxxed.
Wear your mask.
Wash your hands.
And watch your distance.
Welcome back to the Galen Hour. We've been having quite an interesting, very relevant discussion. We're in our final segment, and we're going to allow our guests to do their parting comments on this particular topic. I want to start with asking Celine if she would start us off and give us her last words for tonight. Celine?
Okay, sure, no problem. Thank you, Miss Diana. I think the discussion that we've had so far is really relevant and is necessary, like we continue to mention throughout this tonight's session, that as it relates to the bias, it's important, the hashtag break the bias, to let everyone know that it's time in the 21st century. It's really time that we look and we see these biases, because believe it or not, there are a lot of people who believe that it doesn't exist. So it's good that we can recount and recall between me and Alexander, real life experiences. This is not something that we just made up or something fake. It happens and it exists. And in most of the cases, it's women who are at disadvantage. And I think because of this is one of the reasons that I personally have decided to do my thesis statement for my research paper on this topic, breaking the bias, basically the gender violence, or the violence to an extent that exists as well as it relates to women. And like Alexander and I have mentioned, that there are biases that exist throughout, whether it's in the schools, in sports, in families, from a girl or a baby growing up as well. They are being taught that they should play with dolls, they should play with toys, as it relates to kitchen toys or kitchen sets. So as well, from growing up as a parent, nurturing your child, I think it's also important for us to look at that. If someone should see a baby girl playing with a drill or playing with a tools case or something like that, they would look and be like, wow, but she should have a doll. And I think that as well brings a significant point as to what we teach our girls and our kids from growing up. So we as well, I'm not a parent as yet, but it's also good to take a look at that aspect.
Thank you very much, Celine. Very important indeed. I want to now invite Alexander to give his final words. Alex?
Thank you, Miss Diana. So and it's a personal journey of mine. So this is not to say, oh, I have all the answers and I'm giving it away. But in my personal journey, what I've been trying to do is shift from this male-centric practice of, even what I was referencing one time in a discussion is that, I'm not sure if everyone knew, but at one point it wasn't human rights. It was rights of men or men's rights, something to that effect. So that show you that there's always this reality of the female, and the female being and her rights has to be in close proximity almost to male and male dominance. And so that's, to me, the first thing we need to get away from, this male-centric practice, and especially the use of language, which brings me to a very important point. we need to stop dehumanizing the female being. For example, everything that we reference, and especially when we try to defame or we try to insult someone, where we are being very divisive in using some of the language relative to the female being to insult male persons. For example, in Belize, we males will tell other males, "Oh, you're acting like a skirt," or other derogatory terms. And in actuality, who do we know that uses skirts regularly and in our society? Females. So do you see this reality of whereby we're using language and we're using things relative to the female being and femininity to be wrong, to be this thing to be ashamed of if you're ever to be in relation to it. And so we need to remove ourselves from this, which again, we should take up what Galen University has practiced, gender neutral language. It doesn't always have to be he, him, and man and stuff like that. We need to consider that, especially in today's society, there's far more expressions than he or she. There's they, them, and a variety of other identities. So, and then lastly, what I want to mention is self-love. I would like to believe that, and it goes in line with what I've been taught, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs teach that at the very top of our pyramid, we want self-actualization. And to me, a part of that would be this complete and fullness of love, and especially of self-love. So what I begin to ask myself is, how can I begin to love Alexander more if I have all of these degrading practices that I'm using every day? So to me, that means starting to ask these hard questions. The truth is, did what my father teach me, is it right? Did my mom teach me the right way to love women? Did my family, did my grandparents? And like I said, it is a hard question, because sometimes you have to conclude, guess what? Your dad didn't teach you the right way. Your mom didn't teach you the right way. However, a part of that self-actualization, a part of that self-love is realizing that you, an adult or someone growing to want to love the person that you see in the mirror, you have a responsibility to go and educate yourself, which again, I'm advocating for Galen University, but educate yourself, read books, do research. You have a responsibility to yourself to be your best self. And it brings me to the point, because as Ms. Diana mentioned, I am the president of the Rotaract Club of Galen University, which is also championing this initiative of breaking the bias. And something we have is called the four-way test. And so I would like to read that to you. It says, one second, sorry. So it says the four-way test of the things we think, which considers the mental element, what we say, the oral element, which I mentioned, language, and what we do, the physical element, our actions. So first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? To me, these are four very amazing questions to move forward in life with, because, for me, it considers everything. And for that, I thank Galen University, because being a president, being a student leader, being active and engaged in these very conversations, I can promise you, in all of your classes, it has allowed me to develop this sense, and by just sharing in these uninhibited discussions, I've been able to grow in honesty, humanity, mindfulness, and responsibility. And so I can tell you from my experience, that is the Galen way, and that is the Galen culture. So I'm thankful for that. And, again, we all have this responsibility to be better persons.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alexander. I want to now invite Dr. McMillan to give her last words. Dr. McMillan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Powerful statements, testimonials from our students. And of course, I cannot help but be hopeful, as I have always told them. So what are you going to do differently? How are you going to break the bias? It's almost like I'm putting pressure on them, right? I think, considering all that we have heard, we need to interrogate ourselves about the ways in which we are contributing to the bias that these two young people have shared with us. All right? The bias we have been interacting with. And to be quite frank, being complicit without actually knowing what we're doing. We have to understand that conscious and unconscious bias, negatively impact our young women, our girls, and this bias creates lifelong scars. We have got to remember that. We must understand that Belize's progress hinges on the contribution of women and girls. Productive women and girls are key to raising healthy families. Productive women and girls are key to nation building. The question then is, what are we doing beyond raising awareness? And I am hoping that we did a lot of that tonight. But beyond that, what will each of us here on this panel and each of you listening commit to do to stop the gender bias? And having said that, thank you and good night.
Thank you all so very much. What a wonderful discussion. It couldn't have come at a better time. And there's always space and room for this type of discussion, but in Women's Month, it's well placed. I'm really happy to hear how open-minded, how fair-minded our Galen Eagles are. They literally have their fingers on the pulse of the issue. I would like to see more men think the way Alexander thinks, and definitely more women the way Celine thinks. And if each of us do our part, we will make progress in this fight to break the bias. Thank you for joining us on Wednesday nights for the Galen Hour. As I had said earlier, it is a production of Galen University. It focuses on academic excellence, sustainable development, and lifelong learning. See you next week, same time, same place, for another episode of the Galen Hour. Have a good night.
On the lovely hill